This is Taking the Lead, a podcast for B2B tech professionals, leaders, and executives who want to learn from female icons in the tech industry. In each episode, host Christina Brady interviews women who are driving revenue for some of the most respected tech companies in the world. Are you ready to get inspired?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Taking the Lead. I am Christina Brady. I am your host. And if you hear a little bit of laughter in my voice, it's because my incredible guest today just brings that out of me. And we will get there in a moment. But first, I would love to kick it off by thanking our incredible partners, Women in Sales. If you have not heard of Women in Sales, they are focused on elevating, empowering, and promoting women within the sales profession. And in order for them to realize that vision and create a more equitable sales team in the future, they recognize that everyone has to be a part of that conversation and contribute toward the process. They believe, I believe, we believe that we can help mold the future of sales to be more inclusive. If you'd like to get involved, head over to www.women-in-sales.com and join in on the conversation on Slack. And that brings me to Laura Wheeler, my guest. You are the owner and operator of Renegade Operations. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's so good to be here.
Like, great to have you here. And you know what's interesting? Speaking of partners, you're our newest partner. So instead of having me read out Laura, why don't you tell the people?
Tell
the people what you do.
Yeah. Well, after taking 16 years of go-to-market leadership and roles in a W-2, I just decided to go off on my own, pave a new path. And so Renegade Operations was born. And the way I like to think about it is daring to operate differently. And what I mean by that, I know, is there's a whole world of this new essence of revenue operations. And my background is in equal parts operating and enablement. And I think that there's a unique thing that I can bring to specific clients that are looking to humanize the revenue operations piece, whether that's through process, change enablement, their people, their tech stack. Let's make it a little fun and let's understand what our buyers are doing differently. So that's the approach that I'm taking, is daring to operate differently.
Oh, like that tagline gives me goosebumps.
Good.
Especially because when we were in the green room, there's no green room. It was just before I hit record. It was before I hit record. But you were talking about, as you've been in this industry for as long as you have, and actually you have a bit of a unique background, which I think is part of what makes you an incredible operator. Before I go on that, tell us about your background, because it's not what folks would think, but it's part of what makes you, I mean, look, I worked with you. It makes you incredible at what you do. Tell the people your story.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in addition to the go-to-market piece, obviously I was in a band and have some improv background. So, but my uniqueness comes from, I entered the tech world at the age of 30. It was one of those things where I didn't really, the tech world as far as building my career. So in today's age, that's actually pretty late. And I've held positions both from direct sales to OEM to manufacturer's rep to enablement and building teams and working my way up through leadership. And there was always a piece of curiosity of how things were made and how decisions were happening, because I've had a lot of change in process and tech happen to me. And so I'm trying to take the unique approach of each one of those elements of, I've been a stakeholder, I've also been an enabler, and I've also been an operator. And so with kind of that Swiss Army knife, that's the approach that I want to take into this new world of revenue operations, where it's been so dry. And let's make sure that we are taking care of our people, because that is our biggest and most best human element to accelerate growth.
Oh my gosh. How do you feel like your experience being an enabler and being a salesperson has helped to frame the way that you approach cross-functional partners and people that you are working with?
Oh my gosh. So as, a salesperson, and I was very client facing, both from a new acquisition and an existing business per se, I had a lot of skill gaps that You have this fear as a salesperson that I'm not good enough, or I need to learn these new tactics of how to, go about a go to market process, or change will happen internally. And there's this natural fear of I'm not going to know how to do this. I need to get to my number. And so then as an enabler or operator, I take that to heart because we want to make sure that we're not just equipping our people with the right technology, but we're equipping them with the right skills to be confident in their own destiny to get to their number. And I look at that as a pure partnership. I think the biggest accomplishment that I can see is when an enablement or an operations team has a really synergetic relationship with their stakeholders, maybe almost too much, where your stakeholders will come to you with ideas or questions. It's not always like, hey, there's a problem, but your stakeholders can help you identify where efficiencies can happen. And so I truly believe that opening the doors of communication and having that relationship is so, so key because it goes both ways. And I've had many of people in the past, maybe too much, present solutions to some of the problems that they have. And honestly, sometimes they're really great. Makes my life easier.
100%. Well, and you approach your work with a level of empathy that I think can really only be achieved by being in that seat and
Yeah.
walking the path in those shoes. When I think back to, years and years ago when I was a salesperson, there was this tension at the organization that I was at with the operations team.
Mm-mm.
And disrespect is the wrong word, but the folks that were in sales, myself included, and the folks that were in operations had never actually sat in each other's seat before. So we're
Yeah.
approaching things from very, very opposite points of view. And I remember taking hours and hours of training where
Mm.
both teams were trying to train each other on like what it's like
What
to
to
be
sit in
them.
this seat?
The-
Yeah.
yes, and it was ineffective. And so
Yeah.
how do you solve for something like that when you're going to work at a company right now? Fix it, Laura. And because you're going to see that, right? Like
Yeah.
you're going to be working with
We're
a
here.
lot of organizations where you are coming in and you're flipping this on its head. And if you haven't already, you're going to hit on this tension that they have. And is this something that you would actively look to approach and solve when you first enter into an org?
Yes.
The answer is yes.
Yes. The answer is always yes. I think there's twofold here. One is if I'm approaching it from a consulting perspective or I'm a full-time employee coming in for revenue operations, I'm like, we're going to solve this. I actually just recently had a client where very disparate go-to-market teams. And it was this, and not so simple, but it was this simple fact of us sitting down in a room, me literally forcing function of sitting down and mapping the customer journey with each touch point. I am telling you, and we had operations, marketing, customer success, sales, leadership, product, a representative from every single person that is touching that customer, sitting in the room and mapping out touch points of how they're showing up to support their buyer. Their minds were blown. And this isn't very revolutionary, but what it does take is a unique blend of one, a dedication of time. So you need to take the time to slow down instead of just piling on processes and new things to fix something, to go back, slow down, and try to understand how each part of the organization is working together. There was such an interesting understanding from the marketing team into how the CS team or the sales team that maybe they were both touching the customer in both of these facets or a major gap. And I think that for the most part, the biggest thing and takeaway from that session was building empathy across teams. Sure, we got a customer journey. Sure, we had mapped out touch points. Sure, but it was the mutual collective of now I'm seeing them flourishly and proactively seek each other out for guidance, for validation. Hey, I'm working on this thing. How does it affect you in your role? And so it's just opening those doors. The second piece of that is oftentimes revenue operators or enablers come up through a discipline. So whether it's finance for revenue operations or in enablement, it's learning and development. And it's okay to not have been in the seller's seat before. However, you need to be curious and do your due diligence. And it's different at every company. when you start a role or you're servicing your stakeholders, if they are sellers in the go-to-market organization, to sit with them and be curious about how their day is, what they're trying to achieve, how their success and their metrics are mapped, to give you a greater lens and perspective on how you can support them in their journey. Because that's ultimately what we're trying to do here.
And you keep using the word journey and empathy, and it makes me think about an exercise that you and I did when we were working together that we thought
Yeah.
initially was going to be like look. I remember us saying, let's pop in a room.
Hmm.
Pop in a room when we're all together, which is,
Uh-huh.
twice a year. And we'll just whiteboard out
Mhm.
the customer journey.
Yeah.
Right. And it was,
Yeah.
we're just going to whiteboard it out and we're going to pick out what. And as we got in there was almost this state of paralysis of just, there's so much that goes into it. And the
Yeah.
further you get down the path of building
Yeah.
out a customer journey, the harder it is to go in and fix the areas
Yes.
that are kind of tweaking. I know one of the things that you're super passionate about is building proper customer journeys from the
Mhm.
start,
Yeah.
right? Where do
Mhm.
you find that these things break almost immediately?
Oh, there's plenty. One is, once you're building this customer journey, it is a true journey. It is not just a stake in the ground. This is what we're doing. I think one common pitfall is that you never address it again. You do it once, you let it sit on a shelf, and then you never visit it because well, often our companies are changing, especially in that early stage startup world. Whether you're launching a new product, you could be an entire enterprise company and you're launching a new product that might open up a new ICP, might open up a new buyer's journey. And if we're not taking the time to understand how that is affecting the humans on the other side, our buyers, who they are, what they care about, how they're feeling, how they're engaging with us, how we're keeping them within the funnel, how we're mitigating churn, how we're building customer advocacy. It's those moments and milestones of change where we don't go back and visit it. The second piece is accountability and silos. And so,
I don't mean to laugh, but
well, you have to actually start and even before we do a customer journey session, I like to assess the current state of the leadership culture because it really takes a culture of openness, communication, and accountability from the top, not just from the bottoms up, what I'm doing, but from the top down. If you have a fear-based culture of change, if you have leaders that go and have siloed conversations and you are not facilitating this, customer journey inclusion, it will fail. And so I think it starts with really good, open leadership communication and then also revisiting it at least, and I'm just going to throw that out there, at least twice a year. At least. I mean, you could even just do a, hey, is it time to do our customer journey check? Just to make sure that we're on the right track.
Well, the breaking down of silos is huge because when you're having to go and plan this out, you there's more folks in the room than you think need to actually be there. And so when you're talking about breaking down silos, let's say you're getting in a room, like you and I tried initially, we tried to do it together, and then we were like, wait, we need
Whoa.
this person, this person, this
You
person, this
know,
person. Are they free right now to run in here? So there was this kind of who needs to be involved, right? And that was more so me being very bullish, we're gonna rebuild you and me together. Doesn't work.
Yeah.
Who When you're building something like a customer journey, which we don't mean just once they've already bought, right? The customer journey starts. When does a customer journey start, in your opinion?
Customer journey starts from your brand, recognize any sort of brand that's out there.
That was a
Was
trap
that
question. Because of course I knew you would. Yeah,
Such a
the first time that they come in contact with your brand. So that means, so then, okay, if you look at it that where it's the first time I learned about XYZ company,
Yeah.
and you're at the company saying we have to be aligned, we have to break down silos, and all of us have to do our part in the customer journey. Who has to be in that room?
Everyone.
No,
Well, it depends on, actually, maybe it doesn't really depend on what stage you're at either, because your brand exists in your marketing. And that's really where who's probably the best to develop and help be creative about this brand. It exists in your go-to-market team. So the how you are actually speaking to your customers, how you are finding them, how are you guiding them through this process. I've been at multiple companies where we would get email back from customers saying, man, this was such a great experience for how your sales team guided us through, whether we ended up being a customer or not. Like, it was a good experience. And in the long run, that's what you want, is that making sure that your buyer is going through something that's really equitable. You need your customer success, or however your, existing customers are happening, your product. I mean, think about if you are a customer, whether you have a free trial, free version, or paid, the product and how you engage with that is also very key into your brand and your customer journey. And so I think no one is really immune. You
No,
also
no one gets out of
have
it.
thought leadership from your CEO or your COO, or how they are showing up in on LinkedIn or in social media. And so in college, I was in a sorority. And so they always talked about our brand and how exceptional it was and how important it was to keep the integrity of our brand. So obviously you can't drink in your letters, because if you were to get unruly or do something really silly, they wouldn't know you from another person, but they would know those letters on your jacket. And so that affects every single person within an organization. And that truly is brand. And I actually learned that way in college on how to protect that. So I really think that's super key in a customer journey as well. We couldn't drink in our letters. So as a sorority, if you were to get unruly, or how college is, it was a
I
big
never
no.
drank in college. No one
Yeah,
does.
absolutely. Yeah, me either.
We don't do
Never
that.
skipped class. But same, they would tell us that they wouldn't recognize or know Laura Wheeler from, Christina Brady. But if you're wearing those letters, that is actually your sorority brand. And so let's unify and make sure that we are showing up in a way that campus wants us to, or any sort of outsider. So I think that when we talk about brand, it's not just from a tech perspective, it's your personal brand and your professional brand. And I learned that really ages ago, maybe a couple of years ago when I was in college. And it's really stuck with me from that moment.
Well, it's big. And so many people think of it as personal brand. And then to
Yeah.
translate that to professional brand
Yeah.
is difficult. Now, when you talk about this idea of the first time that they come across your company, like their journey has already begun, like the
Yeah.
moment of awareness.
Yes.
Do
Yeah.
you find when you are building customer journeys that there is a difference between the way they acquire customers? So a sales-led growth model versus like a PLG model where the customer is interacting with your company differently.
Mhm.
Do you
Yeah.
find that you're having different kinds of conversations around the start of the journey in those instances?
Absolutely. And, case in point, I think early age in a startup, you can have one customer journey, but it's how your customers are coming into the funnel. And so not only just from like an not really attribution perspective, but if you're a product led growth company, you need your product in that customer journey. You need to have a good UI. You need to have good reviews on G2. You need to be able to have a ton of referrals, because when was the last time you bought technology? If someone was like, hey, this piece of technology doesn't work in passing or in a Slack channel, like that within itself is a piece of the customer journey. You want to make sure that people are promoting you, that are putting out good vibes, that are going to be referrals for you. And if negative things come up, like, hey, that product didn't work, or their customer success was horrible, that's going to then deter me. And I don't even have to do any type of research on that, because I might trust that person because they know what they're talking about. And so I think if you are more of a marketing led or sales led, or now, the new buzzword CS led growth company, woo, I think that there are different customer journeys, and each one of those needs to be mapped. And it could just be a dovetail into it, into the holistic vision that you are then interacting with your buyer.
Can you go into a little more tactically? You listed out some different ways that they're being led. What are really kind of the differences between those? Is it really just naming? Is it nomenclature? Or is that really a different way to view a customer journey?
The CS led, or like I think it's just a different way of how are your customers finding you,
Mm.
and how are they buying you? And because there can be minimal touch for a product led growth company. I worked for a product led growth company, and I mean, as a salesperson, that was pretty amazing. It's like the product was incredible. Really, all I had to do was like the air traffic control facilitate, making sure that this is the right customer for then the advocacy on the other side. And so then it was more upsell and it was a land and expand model. And that's really where you want to get into. So sure, the nomenclature of between is similar, but I really think it's the where the awareness piece comes from, where you're generating new revenue, and that then warrants a customer journey because those people are showing up in different ways, and you're not going to want to show up to your buyer to either slow down a process. You just want to accelerate that.
Oh, yeah. Well, and speaking of accelerating it, right? It's like, so we
Mhm.
want them to know about us, and then we want them to buy, and then we want them to stay. And so if you really
Yes.
high level break down the stages where
Mhm.
there needs to be work, and I'm probably going to miss some, right? But there's that initial sort of brand evangelism. How do they find out about you, right? And
Yeah.
then there's how do we actually engage them? And then we start talking about things like attribution, which
Woo!
I know that's sexy when I drop a word like attribution in a conversation, and we can dig into that. But so then there's attribution, right? Where marketing and sales
Yeah.
fight over it, like
Mhm.
who's it attributed to?
Yeah.
And then there's the actual sales process, which is the sales
Mhm.
process is a part of the customer journey. And then
Absolutely.
there's the contracting portion of the journey. What is it
Mhm.
like to actually buy? And with the
Mhm.
contracting, it's what happens 1 minute, 1 hour, 1 day, 1 week, 1 month after they sign, right? The handoff.
Mhm.
And then
Mhm.
there's the rest.
Yeah.
By the rest, we mean the rest of the time that the customer is with you to
Yeah.
renewal.
Yeah.
When we're looking at those stages, and I
Mhm.
missed probably like 16, you're the professional on this. Where where would you say there's a lot of tension internally, or where are some really common places
Mhm.
that the customer journey breaks and actually impacts revenue and things like
Yeah.
that?
I think there's two kind of key moments or milestones. One would be the more front of funnel. I would consider it more of the evaluation validation stage, however you want to
You
say that. But
squared.
it's, yeah, let's throw out a buzzword. But it's really where the buyer is making a choice. And in your terms, when we worked together, it was either like to buy or build, like this is the no go, go. And I think it's really key for our sales team or whomever is touching it at that moment to connect it back to understanding, is this the right customer that is going to be a customer for lifetime and create customer advocacy? Look, our sellers can sell all day long, sometimes without a process. I can't even believe I said that as a revenue operator, but honestly, it's like, go
No one's
sell.
gonna hear this. No, I'm just kidding. A
Yeah,
lot of people
no.
listen.
But, you want to make sure that you are targeting and selling to the right people upfront. Because then what happens on the back end, and we all know what happens.
Tell us though. Tell us what happened.
Oh,
Say it.
so you go to develop these customers because churn is going to cost you more in the long run than it is going to for that new revenue coming in the door. And I'm just going to like preach that.
Mhm.
And in two folds, and I'll get to that in a second, talking about brand. But the second piece is if you are not selling to the right people, if they are not bought in, if you have not done your proper due diligence in the pre sales process, for you to be able, as a whoever is servicing the existing client, to quantify impact and to have buy in from that customer that they will become an advocate and they are seeing value in your product, that is another like contentious point because you can sell all day long upfront and then they just go away. There's a ton of just software as a service, hardware as a service,
Hat.
revenue operations as a service. But if you cannot quantify the impact on the latter part, that is going
Mm.
to affect your revenue downstream. And that has a greater implications. And I said in twofold. One, obviously revenue loss. You don't want unpredictability in this loss of revenue, which many companies have seen over 2022 and 2023. Hopefully, we've mitigated that moving into 2024, and you can start to then fix that process in the beginning. The second piece, bringing it full circle back to brand. If you cannot provide an impact or a value back to your customer, that will be a ding on your brand moving forward. And that's full stop. Because if somebody churns, oh, yeah, we used them, but we never found value. See you later, 15 potential customers or prospects. That word of mouth is still extremely valuable to and or a blocker or an accelerator into the front funnel of a customer journey. And so those moments of getting the right people and selling to the right people is really where I see contention and awareness, and you need to actually pay attention to.
Well, when you talk about quantifying the impact,
Mhm.
that's my love language, where in so
Yeah.
many organizations, like, the field is barren of fruit there, right? Who owns
Yeah.
that? Like, who is supposed to own helping the customer understand and
Mhm.
quantify the impact? Is that the initial sales rep? Is that
Mm.
the client success manager? Is it the AE when they're randomly brought back in when the customer wants to spend more? Is it operations? Is it finance? Is it marketing? Is it PMM? Like,
Mm.
who owns the bag on ensuring that every customer knows how to quantify the impact?
I I think it exists across the funnel.
That's right.
You have to have customer data and milestones to even understand and quantify. You have to have a sales team that's captured, hey, this is what we were trying to do and the problem and the use case and understanding why they bought your solution in the first place. And then it is up to the, adoption and implementation team, however you want to qualify that internally, to make sure that they are on track and on target to use your product to solve that problem. It is the thought leadership from the marketing piece to say this is how you can use or how other customers have used our product to quantify an impact, and you can do so too. It's customer marketing, PMM, it's product, it's building a product that's actually bringing value
Ugh.
instead of just being a nice to have.
Mhm.
And when all of those things are very synergetic, and we sit here and talk about, oh yeah, that's exactly what you need. It's very hard to do that. And it takes intentionality, it takes awareness, it takes taking away the ego of your own department and saying, how can I then help our customers? Because it's not just time, it's time to value that, where that is super critical to getting customer advocacy and customers for life. And it takes a village. So, horrible answer to say everyone, but in each one of those elements, I do think that people play process.
But that is the right answer. Like, the
Okay.
answer is, I think so many organizations, at least in my opinion, right?
Yeah.
Take it or leave it. But I think so many orgs try to be like, "Oh, who owns this?" And there's so much that goes into it. You
Mhm.
also delved a little bit there into, like, ensuring that you have a product that actually
Yeah.
solves a core need.
Mhm.
Can you talk a little bit about how customer journey and customer feedback and product roadmap can sometimes slam into each other in a really scary way?
Oh, yeah. Well, first of all, if you're not listening to your customers or capturing competitive analysis of what other customers are doing, I think that you're doing a detriment. The cool part about a customer journey is it's mapping the internal touch points to your buyer. And at every single one of those moments, you can capture some sort of product feedback, whether that is brand product feedback, whether that is your sales process feedback. Oh, I would really like to try this before I buy this. Maybe you might not have a free trial. This is where some of like inspiration can come from.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the, post sale process on, hey, it would be really nice if, or you're falling short on this, or I would like to see customer analytics here. And so the customer feedback on products specifically should be captured along the way. And it is up to that mechanism, however you want to do that. Hopefully it's operationalized and then fed back to the product team to have an open dialogue, because what happens, and this happens all the time, when maybe you as a sales leader say, hey, we're going to lose this deal or we're going to lose this customer if we don't have this feature. And then product's going to say, well, can you quantify that? Like what type of ARR is attached to that? Or are other companies or, competitors doing that? Does that align with our mission and how we're trying to go to market? And that's where teams can come together in saying, this product feedback is a nice to have. It can also help with customer health. If you have a noisy and a loud customer, actually, that's pretty good. So you want to capture that and have that as a health metric for your customers giving feedback. And that's where that kind of synergy comes in, and why actually products should have a seat at the table when you are thinking about customer journey mapping.
I mean, that like my mind is going to so many places, some from personal experience of stepping in a
Like,
puddle here, and others from just picturing what it could
yeah,
be like if it works the right way.
weird.
It goes back to what you talked about with identifying very, very early on who are the right
Yeah.
customers and who are the need to have. Because you
Mhm.
and I have both seen examples of what happens when the wrong customers that may be spending a lot of money start to
Mhm.
impact your product journey. And
Yeah.
then you start building product features that
Yes.
don't actually serve your ICP, and the
Yeah.
detriment of that
Yes.
and trying to fix that is massive. So
Yes.
last question on this one is how do you have the professional discipline to be able to know if that product feature is
Mhm.
actually going to serve the right customer or not? Like, what can
Oh,
companies do to protect against that? I'm trying to protect revenue, and the
yeah.
revenue is saying to build this, but I don't
Yeah.
think it matches with what our customer like, how do you do that? How do you make that
Yeah.
decision?
I think there's 2 ways. One is ev to be able to be confident in making a decision if you're gonna build a product or not, you have to have a mission and a vision for your product,
Mm,
period.
mm.
And that is whether you're trying to solve world hunger. Does
That's
this
my
feat
product.
Yeah, that's
Endless
yeah,
food.
yeah, good luck. Does this feature help amplify that mission of how we are going to market? And, here's the thing, product vision can change because the market might change.
Right.
But I think that it's taking a step back and making sure that you are aligned as an executive team in how the product is being built to how it's going to market and what's happening in the market. So there's a bunch of like competitive and customer analysis that you can do. And then coming to the table and, like I said, being intentionally deliberate about what you are building. Because you can also do an analysis for very tactical of, if I built this dot dot dot, does this open up competitors or a competitive landscape? Does this change who I am selling to? And those
Mhm.
2 are very big keys. So, am I then, and then you start to spin your wheels. Okay. Well, if then yes, I'm like visioning a flow
We're
chart.
building a I was like, there's a flywheel afloat.
Yeah.
We're building
There's
something.
something about,
It's a
is this
bracket. Yeah.
yeah, is this making it more complicated for my sellers to go to market? Instead of having 2 primary ICPs or 2 primary decision makers, now I have 5. And so that's going to elongate your sales cycle. That is going to make it more complicated. You are going to have to, and do you have the right people to be able to have that talk track or to be able to talk to those individuals? Are you going to now have to go up a level and talk to a C level where maybe you were, managing more at the director or VP? And so what is the skill implication and to the people that are going to have to take this to market? And so if you can start to then say and conceptualize, if I build this, what does this mean for our ICP, for our buyers personas and our competition? I think then you'll get a good understanding if that is something that you want to invest in, because those are the hidden costs that are one going to hinder your success and stagnate revenue. And then when you are not successful because you didn't think about that, the finger pointing into departments start to happen. And that will break down your teams. You will lose trust. And then you don't really know how to move forward and you'll get into this vicious cycle.
Whew. But don't worry, because if you hire Renegade Operations, they're gonna do
Oh,
you know who can help you to solve that? Another day, another day. I feel like we could, as always with this show, we could just
yeah,
talk about this forever, but it
good.
is time to move to our rapid reveal section.
Oh,
Are you
no.
ready? I know.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
all right, I got 3 questions, 3 easy
Mhm,
questions, 60 seconds or less to answer each. Let's get to
okay.
know you a little bit more and have
Mhm,
some fun.
okay.
Number 1, do you have any hidden party tricks of any kind?
Ooh, hidden party tricks?
Yeah, like something you just pull out.
I mean, I did used to sing in a band, and so sometimes I'll set it up where it's like, "Hey, let's just go to karaoke." And then
No,
basically just dominate everyone. I don't know if that's a party trick or just
that's a party
something
trick. When you do it,
I
it's a
like to
party trick.
do. Like, "Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, what is this, a microphone? Never done this
"Oh, I'm
before."
so shy. I need people to help me." And the next thing you know, you're winning a Grammy.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
winning a Grammy.
That's
I would say
that's
that's probably my
so
party trick, is the
Yes.
slow roll on that I can actually sing pretty well.
I can actually sing. I folks, you're hearing you really well. She
Thank
downplayed it as folks
you.
do.
I'm doing it here. This is a party.
You're
I'm doing
doing
it
it. You're still doing it. Okay.
here. Yeah.
Number 2, what's an irrational fear of yours?
Oh, an irrational fear.
Or
Oh,
rational?
I
What are you scared
mean
of?
to be fair, I don't know if this is a thing, but I'm kind of scared of police officers. Like
I Probably a
like
thing.
like
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of like when I ultimately just start to get like really scared or nervous. And it's around police officers because it like, immediately when I see them in a car on the highway, like, even if I'm not speeding or, like, in the airport, I automatically think, "I am guilty. They're gonna find
I don't
something about me that they're gonna throw me in jail." I don't know why, maybe it's just the renegade in me, but I think my irrational fear is, like, the authority, police, oof.
I laugh because I think we've all kind of felt that where you're walking, you make eye contact, and you're like,
Oh, yeah, I'm
"Look
guilty.
normal. Just look normal. Don't look like you've committed a crime.
Yeah.
Normal."
Yeah,
Yep.
especially in
Yeah.
airports, oh my gosh, so
Oh, the
heightened.
worst. When they have the dog, you ever have that
Well,
where
and
you're
I don't
going through
even know drugs,
there's
it's
but
they're
I'm
gonna
like,
find
perhaps
it. They're gonna find
they're gonna find something. They're gonna
something.
find something illegal on me.
Yeah,
Who knows? Yeah, every time there's that walk where I don't breathe, they're like, "Just walk normally." I was like, "I
I
can't.
can't. Yeah.
I can't." Oh, number 3.
Oh,
What's
oh,
the best advice that you could give somebody who's feeling self-doubt?
there's a kind of a cop out answer, but when I'm feeling self-doubt, I go to the gym. I know that sounds crazy, but the
Oh, movement is
endorphins that you
medicine.
get
Yeah.
from just, like, physical activity usually is very empowering. If you are unable to, like, go to a gym or that's just not your thing, I've, like, really, really leaned on my network. There's, like, a group chat that I have where I can be, like, completely vulnerable of like, "Man, I am just not feeling it today." And this group is just incredible, like, reminding me that I'm awesome and this is cool, but it's that remembering to ask for help that I think that people probably need. Like, you should not go about that alone. Like, self-doubt persists in every single person, like, hands down. If you say you don't have self-doubt, you're a psychopath, like a literal psychopath.
Yeah.
And people need to constantly be reminded of their greatness. And so another maybe the third thing is, like, make it a point to tell someone that they're great. That will also
Oh.
make you feel great. I recently just reached out to someone on LinkedIn that I've seen, and she's like this cool person. And I'm like, you know what? Like, we don't do this often enough. Like, I'm just going to tell her she's awesome. Like,
Awesome.
it could make her day. Who knows? But like, I don't need anything from it. And it made me feel better. And she wrote back to me and she was like, oh my gosh, thank you. Like, I needed this today. And I was like, you're welcome. And hopefully that, like, paying it forward will eventually make it your way back to you.
Lifting the people up as you always do. Laura,
Yes.
I can imagine a lot of folks are gonna wanna get to know you because you're amazing. How can they connect with you? How can they learn more
You're
about Renegade and what you're doing? Give us the
uh,
plug.
yeah. Well, I'm semi-active on LinkedIn trying to be better. So you can always slide into my DMs. Is that how you do it on LinkedIn?
I think, like, trip in,
Yeah. Yeah.
blast into her DMs.
Yeah, connect with me. I mean, whether you shoot a personal message or follow, I also am offering, if you are interested in understanding and how to build your revenue operations career, if you feel stuck, on my website, I do offer a free, like, just mentorship 30-minute session. Like, I can guarantee if you leave with anything, a couple of belly laughs and a, like, a framework and a new connection. So,
That in your contract, the belly
yeah.
laughs and a framework.
Yes, yes. Minimum. There will be a minimum of belly laughs. And yeah, I'm passionate about getting to know and networking with people and lifting those people up and obviously, networking. So please reach out.
Well, as always, it has been an honor. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christina. It's wonderful to see your face again.
And that's all, folks.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Taking the Lead. If you're looking for more inspiring stories from women leaders in B2B tech, then visit us at motionagency.io/takingthelead.